I am Sarah, 28 years old, and I work as a graphic designer in Austin, Texas. Last Sunday should have been a celebration of our family getting back on our feet, but instead I found myself standing in our living room while my parents handed over the deed to our family home to my older brother Jake, who hadn't stepped foot in Texas in over a year. "Pack your things, Sarah," my mother said, not even looking at me. "Jake's moving back with his family next month, and they will need the space." My father just nodded, avoiding my eyes completely. It is time you learned to be independent anyway. But what they didn't know was the stack of documents hidden in my bedroom closet. In 72 hours, when Jake showed up expecting to move into a fully renovated house, he had discovered the truth about who really owned this place. What would you do if your family tried to steal your inheritance right from under you? The betrayal started years ago, though I didn't recognize it then. I was fresh out of the University of Texas with my graphic design degree, eager to start my career and help my family through tough times. Our house in Austin's Mueller neighborhood had been my grandmother's pride and joy, a charming 1950s bungalow she had bought with her husband after World War II. When Grandma Rose passed away 4 years ago, I assumed the house went to my parents like any normal family inheritance. Dad had lost his construction job during the recession, and Mom's part-time work at the local elementary school barely covered groceries. I stepped up without hesitation, moving back home and contributing my entire $4,200 monthly salary from Creative Solutions, a downtown design agency near Lady Bird Lake. "We are so grateful, honey," Mom would say, watching me write another check for the mortgage. "You are saving our family." I covered everything: the $1,800 monthly mortgage payment, $400 in utilities, $300 for property taxes, plus groceries and household expenses. I even paid for Dad's truck repairs when his Ford broke down, and covered Mom's medical bills when she needed dental work. Over 3 years, I calculated I had contributed nearly $95,000 to keeping our home afloat. I didn't mind the sacrifice because this was our family sanctuary, filled with Grandma Rose's antique furniture and my childhood memories. I had spent countless evenings after work painting the living room a warm sage green, replacing the old carpet with hardwood floors I had saved for months to afford, and updating the kitchen cabinets to honor Grandma's vintage style while making it functional for modern life. Meanwhile, my brother Jake was living his best life in Denver, Colorado, working as a marketing manager for some tech startup and posting Instagram photos of ski trips to Aspen and fancy dinners at trendy restaurants. When I would mention our financial struggles during our rare phone calls, he would brush it off with practiced dismissal. "You have got it handled, sis," he would say, his voice distracted like he was already thinking about something else. "Besides, I am building my own life here. Madison and I are really focused on our careers right now." Jake visited exactly twice in 4 years. Once for Grandma's funeral, where he spent the entire time on his phone dealing with work calls, and once last Christmas for 3 days. During that Christmas visit, I noticed Mom and Dad treating him like a returning celebrity, cooking his favorite barbacoa tacos and hanging on every word about his successful career and his girlfriend Madison, who worked for some marketing firm in Boulder. "Jake's doing so incredibly well," Mom gushed after he left, washing dishes while I dried. "Madison's pregnant, you know. They will need stability and family support soon." I felt a chill run down my spine but pushed it aside. This was my home too, and I had earned my place here through years of sacrifice and love. The first crack in my perfect family illusion came last month when I overheard Mom on the phone with Jake. I was in the kitchen, making my famous chicken and dumplings for Sunday dinner, when her voice drifted from the living room, thinking I was upstairs showering. "Don't worry about Sarah," she said quietly, her tone conspiratorial. "She has always been independent. She will figure it out when the time comes." My blood ran cold, and I froze with the wooden spoon halfway to my mouth for tasting. Figure what out? The conversation continued, and I caught fragments that made my stomach churn. Perfect timing with the baby coming in spring, and she has had long enough to get established in her career, and most chilling of all, Rose always said this house needed children's laughter again that night. I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan that had been there since I was 12. My mind racing with questions. Something was happening behind my back. Something that involved my future and my place in this family. And I needed to find out what. The truth began unraveling when I decided to organize Grandma Rose's old papers for a memorial scrapbook project I had been planning for her birthday. I had been putting it off for years, but something drove me to the dusty boxes stored in the garage that weekend. Among faded photographs of family barbecues and handwritten recipe cards for her famous pecan pie, I found a manila envelope marked Important Documents. Rose Davidson in her careful cursive handwriting. Inside was Grandma's will, dated 6 months before her death and notarized by Henderson and Associates, a law firm on South Lamar. My hands trembled as I read the opening lines. I, Rosemarie Davidson, being of sound mind and body, hereby bequeath my property at 2847 Maple Street, Austin, Texas, to my beloved granddaughter, Sarah Elizabeth Parker, who has shown me the greatest love and devotion in my final years. The house was mine, had always been mine. I read the document 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each pass. Grandma had left the house to me directly, not to my parents. The will was properly notarized, witnessed by 2 neighbors I remembered, and filed with Travis County. According to the date stamp, my parents had known about this for 4 years. 4 years of watching me pour my life savings into their house. 4 years of letting me believe I was the dutiful daughter helping struggling parents, when I was actually paying for my own property. 4 years of calculated lies while they secretly planned to give my inheritance to Jake. I grabbed my laptop and started researching Texas property records online. The Travis County Clerk's website showed the house had been officially transferred to my name upon Grandma's death, but somehow my parents had maintained control of the deed and all decision-making. I needed professional help to understand how this was legally possible. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and contacted Rebecca Chen, a family law attorney I had found online with stellar reviews and a specialty in inheritance disputes. Her office was downtown in one of those sleek high-rises near the Capitol, and I made an emergency appointment for that afternoon, my hands shaking as I dialed. Rebecca was sharp, professional, and didn't waste time on pleasantries when I walked into her glass-walled office overlooking Lady Bird Lake. After carefully reviewing the will and my bank statements showing years of house payments, she leaned back in her leather chair with a grim expression that made my stomach drop. "Sarah, this is fraud," she said bluntly, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen this before. "Your parents have been accepting payments for a house they knew belonged to you. They have essentially been stealing from you while planning to transfer your property to your brother." My stomach dropped like I had been punched. What can I do about it? We file an emergency injunction to prevent any transfer of the property, then pursue both civil and criminal charges for fraud, theft, and elder abuse of your grandmother's final wishes. Do you have documentation of all your payments? I nodded, thinking of the meticulous records I had kept in a folder at home. Every bank transfer, every receipt for home improvements, every sacrifice carefully documented, because I had wanted to track how much I was contributing to help the family. "There is something else troubling me," Rebecca continued, pulling out a legal pad. "I need to investigate how they have maintained control of your property. This level of deception suggests they may have forged documents or manipulated the probate process." Over the next 2 days, Rebecca worked closely with Tom Williams, a private investigator and former Austin Police Department detective who specialized in family fraud cases. What they uncovered made my parents' betrayal even more calculated and cruel than I had imagined. My parents had forged my signature on documents relinquishing my inheritance rights, claiming I was financially irresponsible and had abandoned my claim to the property. They had filed false paperwork with Travis County stating I had moved out of state and had no interest in the house. Most shocking of all, they had been planning to sell the house to Jake for exactly $1 to avoid federal gift taxes, making it look like a legitimate sale while essentially giving him my inheritance for free. This is one of the most calculated cases of family fraud I have encountered, Tom told me during our meeting at Rebecca's office, spreading out copies of forged documents across the conference table. They have been planning this for years, possibly since before your grandmother even died. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents with my signature, false filings with the county clerk, and even recorded phone conversations Tom had obtained through legal channels between my parents and Jake discussing their detailed plan to get Sarah out, once Jake was ready to move back to Austin with his growing family. They have been playing a long game, Rebecca added, her expression darkening as she reviewed the evidence, using your love and loyalty against you while systematically stealing your inheritance. I had them dead to rights. Sunday dinner had always been sacred in our family, a tradition Grandma Rose had established decades ago. Even during our toughest financial times, Mom insisted on setting the good china and making a proper meal with all the fixings. This particular Sunday felt different from the moment I walked into the dining room. Jake had flown in from Denver with Madison, who was now 6 months pregnant and glowing with that expectant mother radiance. Ostensibly to visit family, but really to finalize the house transfer they thought I knew nothing about. I sat at our dining room table, the same oak table where I had done homework as a child, watching Mom fuss over Jake and Madison like they were visiting royalty. She served them first, bringing Jake his favorite sweet tea in Grandma's special glasses and hanging on every word about their life in Colorado. Dad carved the honey-glazed ham with unusual ceremony, his chest puffed with pride, clearly excited about some big announcement. "We have the most wonderful news," Mom said, clasping her hands together with barely contained excitement. "Jake and Madison have decided to move back to Austin." Madison rubbed her growing belly and smiled that serene pregnant woman's smile. "We want our baby to grow up around family, especially with Jake's parents nearby to help." Jake grinned, putting his arm protectively around his girlfriend's shoulders. "And Mom and Dad have been incredibly generous, offering to let us have the house. The timing couldn't be more perfect with the baby coming this spring." I set down my fork with deliberate care, the silver clanging against the china loud in the suddenly tense room. "How generous of them indeed." Mom's face flushed slightly, and she shot me a warning look. "Sarah, you understand the situation, don't you? You are young and well-established in your career now. Jake has a family to think about, real responsibilities. Very established." I agreed pleasantly, reaching for my purse hanging on the back of my chair. "In fact, I have been thinking quite a lot about my future lately. And my past." I pulled out a thick manila folder and placed it on the table with deliberate ceremony. Jake's confident smile faltered slightly, and I caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "What is that, honey?" Dad asked, his voice tight with barely concealed nervousness. "Oh, just some paperwork I found while organizing Grandma Rose's things for that memorial scrapbook," I said conversationally, opening the folder with theatrical care. "You know how she kept everything so organized? Turns out she left some very interesting reading material." The silence in the room was deafening. Mom's face went completely white, and Dad's carving knife clattered against his plate with a sharp, metallic sound that made everyone jump. "You see," I continued, my voice steady and calm, despite my racing heart, "I discovered something fascinating. Grandma Rose left this house to me, specifically to me, 4 years ago." Jake leaned forward, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" I slid the will across the polished table surface. "Take a look, big brother. I hereby bequeath my property at 2847 Maple Street, Austin, Texas, to my beloved granddaughter, Sarah Elizabeth Parker, who has shown me the greatest love and devotion in my final years." Madison grabbed the document with trembling hands, her eyes scanning quickly over the legal language. "Jake, what is this? I thought your parents inherited this house." "But that is impossible," Mom stammered, her voice cracking. We inherited everything when Rose died. That is how inheritance works. I pulled out another set of documents, enjoying the growing panic in their eyes. Actually, no. The Travis County property records show this house has been legally in my name for 4 years. But here's where it gets really interesting. I placed bank statements and receipts on the table, like I was dealing cards in a high-stakes poker game. I have been paying the mortgage on my own house, $95,000 over 3 years, plus utilities, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Dad finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. Sarah, you are misunderstanding something, am I? I interrupted smoothly, pulling out Tom's investigation report with its official letterhead. Because according to this private investigator I hired, you forged my signature on documents claiming I abandoned my inheritance. You filed false paperwork with Travis County. You have been committing fraud for 4 years while I unknowingly paid for my own stolen property. The room erupted into chaos. Jake was shouting confused questions at Mom and Dad, his voice rising with each word. Madison was staring at the documents in shock, her hands protectively cradling her belly. My parents were stumbling over each other with contradictory explanations that made no sense. We were protecting the family, Mom cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. You were so young when Rose died, barely out of college. We thought you weren't ready for that kind of responsibility. So you thought you would steal my inheritance and make me pay for it, I said coldly, standing up for dramatic effect, while secretly planning to give my house to Jake as a baby gift. Jake's face was red with anger, but it wasn't directed at me. Mom, Dad, is this actually true? Have you been lying to all of us for 4 years? Dad's shoulders sagged like a deflated balloon. We just wanted what was best for everyone. We thought best for everyone except Sarah, Madison said quietly, still reading through the legal documents. Jake, do you understand what this means? She has been supporting this entire family financially while they plan to kick her out and give her house away. I stood up, gathering my papers with satisfaction. I have already hired an attorney, Rebecca Chen from Chen and Associates downtown. She has filed an emergency injunction preventing any transfer of this property. She is also pursuing both civil and criminal fraud charges. Mom gasped, like I had slapped her. You are actually pressing charges against your own parents? You stole from me for 4 years, I replied, my voice steady as steel. You watched me sacrifice everything to help what I thought was my struggling family, and you were planning to reward me by stealing my inheritance. So yes, I am pressing every charge possible. Jake turned to face our parents, his voice shaking with rage I had never heard from him before. How could you do this? How could you lie to me? To Sarah, to everyone? I thought Sarah was just living here rent-free like some kind of freeloader. You made me feel guilty for not helping more with family expenses. We never meant for it to go this far. Dad started weakly. Bullshit! Jake exploded, slamming his hand on the table and making the china rattle. You had me believing Sarah was taking advantage of you while I built my career in Denver. You made me think I was the responsible one for moving out and becoming independent. All while she was paying for everything, and you were planning to steal her house and give it to me. Madison stood up abruptly, her hand on her belly and her face pale. Jake, we need to leave right now. I cannot be part of this. As my brother and his pregnant girlfriend gathered their things with shaking hands, Jake paused at the dining room doorway. Sarah, I am so sorry. I had absolutely no idea about any of this. If I had known what they were doing, you would have done the right thing. I finished for him, feeling genuine warmth toward my brother, for the first time in years. I know you would have, Jake. This isn't your fault. You are not responsible for their lies. After they left, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle the windows, I stood facing my parents in the wreckage of their carefully constructed deception. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live, I told them calmly. folding the legal documents back into their folder. My attorney will be in touch about the fraud charges and full restitution for every dollar you have stolen from me. Mom started crying harder, her mascara running in black streaks down her cheeks. We are your parents, Sarah. You cannot just throw us out like strangers. Watch me, I said simply, and walked out of the house that had always legally been mine. 3 months later, I stood in the beautifully renovated kitchen of my Austin home. Morning sunlight streaming through the new bay window I had installed with the settlement money. The legal battle had been swift and decisive, exactly as Rebecca had predicted. She had recovered not only the $95,000 I would pay toward the mortgage, but additional damages for fraud, emotional distress, and punitive damages, bringing my total settlement to $165,000. My parents had been forced to pay full restitution and face criminal fraud charges, though they ultimately received probation and community service due to their ages and first offense status. They had moved into a small one-bedroom apartment near Riverside, their relationship with me damaged beyond any hope of repair. But the real surprise had come from Jake. After our explosive dinner confrontation, he would immediately hire his own attorney in Denver to investigate whether he had been unknowingly involved in any fraudulent activity. When everything was cleared and he understood the full scope of what our parents had done, he would send me a certified check for $25,000. I know this doesn't fix what Mom and Dad did to you, his letter had said in his familiar handwriting. But I want you to know that some of us in this family still believe in doing the right thing. I am ashamed that I didn't see what was happening, and I am sorry you had to fight this battle alone. Jake and Madison had ultimately decided to stay in Denver permanently after the truth came out. Madison had been horrified by my parents' behavior and firmly refused to raise her child anywhere near that kind of toxic dysfunction, as she would put it in a long phone call, where she apologized repeatedly for being part of their plan unknowingly. But Jake called me every Sunday now, trying to rebuild our sibling relationship from scratch. We talked about everything except our parents, focusing instead on his new daughter, Emma, named after our great-grandmother, and my flourishing career. My design business had exploded without the financial stress of supporting my parents' elaborate lies. I had landed a major contract with a tech startup downtown, designing their entire brand identity and website. My freelance client list was growing rapidly, and I had even started teaching weekend workshops at the Austin Community College, sharing my skills with other young designers. I would also started dating Marcus Thompson, a photographer I would met at a First Friday art walk on South Lamar. He specialized in architectural photography and had been impressed not just by my design work, but by my strength in fighting for my rights. You rebuilt your entire life from the ground up, Marcus said one evening, as we cooked dinner together in my kitchen, his camera bag slung over one of the chairs. Grandma Rose had left me. That takes incredible courage and self-respect. I smiled, thinking about how far I had traveled from that terrible Sunday dinner. I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you had to discover what you actually deserve. The house felt completely different now, truly mine for the first time in my adult life. I had repainted every room, choosing colors that made me happy, rather than trying to please anyone else. I had filled the space with furniture I had chosen, artwork I had created, and dreams that were entirely my own. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had lived across the street since the 1970s, had stopped by the previous week with homemade chocolate chip cookies and a knowing smile. I always wondered how your parents could suddenly afford to keep this place after your grandmother passed, she had said, settling into my living room with her cup of coffee. Rose would be so proud of how you fought for what was rightfully yours. She always said you were the strongest one in the family. That evening, as I sat on my front porch swing watching the sunset paint the Austin sky in brilliant oranges and deep purples, I reflected on the hardest lesson I had ever learned. Family isn't automatically defined by blood or obligation. Real family is built on trust, mutual respect, and genuine love that doesn't come with hidden agendas. My parents had taught me what family shouldn't be through their calculated betrayal and years of lies. But Jake, Rebecca, Marcus, and even supportive neighbors, like Mrs. Patterson, had shown me what chosen family could look like when built on honesty and respect. I had lost the parents I thought I had, but gained something far more valuable: the unshakable knowledge that I could stand up for myself, fight for what was right, and build a life based on truth rather than manipulation. The house that betrayal built had become the foundation for something infinitely better: a life where I was valued, respected, and never again taken for granted. And sitting there in the fading Texas light, surrounded by the home that had always been meant to be mine, I finally felt completely at peace with the woman I had fought to become.